The North Hunterdon-Voorhees Regional High School District Board of Ed meeting on Tuesday, June 28th is now called to order in accordance with the requirements of the Open Public Meeting Act. NJSA 10-4-6, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided by submission of notice of the time, date, location, or instructions for remote access to the Hunterdon Democrat on December 9th, 2021, the Star Ledger on December 7th, 2021, and subsequently re-advertised on May 19th, 2022. Notice, and to the extent known, the agenda of this meeting has been posted on the North Hunterdon-Voorhees The agenda for this meeting has been posted at the North Hunterdon High School and the Voorhees High School, provided to the municipal clerks of Bethlehem Township, California Borough, Town of Clinton, Clinton Township, Franklin Township, Glen Gardner Borough, Hampton Borough, Highbridge Borough, Lebanon Township, Tewksbury Township, and Union Township, as well as all other interested parties, and posted on the district website. Fire exits are located in the direction indicated. If alerted to fire, please move in a calm and orderly fashion to the nearest smoke-free exit. And at this time, I request that we silence all of our cell phones. Katie, can you please do a roll call?
Ms. Bonomi?
Present.
Mr. Chapman?
Present.
Ms. Logo is absent. Mr. Farvanish is absent. Ms. Hintz is absent. Ms. Hoffman? Here. Mr. Kirchberger?
Here.
Mr. Mueller?
Here.
Ms. Salino?
Here.
Mr. Stanton?
Here.
Mr. Straight?
Here.
Ms. Beato?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. We all rise for the flags.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Can I call for a motion and a second to adopt the attached resolution 062822-2.1 for executive session to discuss matters falling under Category 8 as reflected in the attached resolution. The board expects to be in executive session for approximately an hour, and upon return to public session, action will be taken.
So moved.
Second.
Deb and Rob, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? We're in executive session. call for a motion and a second to reconvene to public session.
Second.
Roger? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? I additionally want to add that the board discussed matters on June 28th, 2022 in the personnel category while we were under executive session. That was under category 8 in the resolution 6062-822-21. I'd like to read a statement regarding the contract amendment for the superintendent of schools, Jeffrey Bender. Whereas the North Hunterdon-Voorhees Regional High School District Board of Ed, herein the board wishes to amend the contract of superintendent of schools, Jeffrey Bender, for the effective period of July 1st through July 1st, 2019 to June 30th, 2023, and pursuant to NJSA 18A 11-11, the board is required to provide public notice 30 days and 10 days prior of its intent to hold a public hearing to take action to amend, extend, renegotiate, and/or alter contract terms and conditions of the district superintendent of schools. Notice was provided to the public via publication in the district's official newspaper on May 26, 2022 and June 17, 2022, and publication on the district's public website every day for the period of May 22nd, 2022 to June 28th, 2022. The subject contract was reviewed and subsequently approved by an interim executive county superintendent of the NJ Department of Education, Hunterdon County Office on April 28th, 2022 for Jeffrey Bender. At this time, we have an opportunity for public comment on the amended contract of the superintendent of schools. The board, pursuant to the NJSA 10-4-12, the Open Public Meetings Act, shall not publicly address personnel matters and shall not respond to comments made to members of the public. Please be aware that the subject of this hearing retains the right of privacy and shall retain all rights regarding defamation and slander according to the laws of New Jersey. The board shall not be held liable for comments made by the members of the public. So at this time, is there any public comment in regards to the contract amendment? Okay, seeing none. I would like to call for a motion.
Question.
There will be no answers to questions tonight, but
That's okay.
you're more than
I'll put
welcome
the
to
question
pose
out
it.
there and just,
Okay,
if somebody wants to answer it via email, they can.
and this is in regards to the superintendent's contract?
Yes,
Okay.
correct. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Good evening.
We got you.
I just have one question. Yesterday when I looked at the agenda, I'm sorry, Christopher Stadoulis, Clinton Township.
Mhm.
When I looked at the agenda regarding the contract, it did, if I recall, it did state that the superintendent would, A, not have to be required to answer anybody's questions and respond to public, people in the community, and also he wouldn't have to attend board meetings. But today when I looked, I didn't see that. So maybe I read something wrong, but I'd like clarification if it did say that yesterday and it was switched, and maybe why. So if you could get back to me on that, either way, that'd be great.
Anyone else for public comment? Okay. Can I call for a motion and a second to approve the amended contract for the period of July 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2023 between the board and Jeffrey Bender?
So moved. Second.
Brian, Deb, And this is a roll call vote.
Ms. Bonomi?
Yes.
Mr. Chapman?
Yes.
Ms. Chrysilova is absent. Mr. Banish, Ms. Hinz, Ms. Hoffman?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchberger?
Yes.
Mr. Mueller?
Yes.
Ms. Salino?
Yes.
Mr. Spanton?
Yes.
Mr. Straight?
Yes.
Ms. Beato?
Yes.
Thank you.
At this point in time, we're going to have our goal-setting discussion with Gwen Thornton of the New Jersey School Boards Association. She's our field representative, and she will facilitate the board goal-setting for 2022-2023 school year. Welcome, Gwen.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be back. Make my week, my month. So nice to see all of you actually face to face as opposed to in our boxes. Thank you for having me. Hopefully we can do this rather expeditiously to talk about both district goals as well as board goals. And we really call this Forging Ahead Together in Goals. We're hoping that September of 2022, we will be back to what we would call the new normal schedule of school, and life will be a lot better. So thinking about that just from the board's perspective, to reflect on what you've learned this past year. I know that you've had discussions around what has been accomplished, and then considering what needs to be continued or move forward, and preparing for September 2022, whatever that looks like. Now, I'm optimistic, crossing my fingers and toes, of course. So I think it's important, too, to just take a couple of moments to think about and reflect over the course of the last 2 years what we've learned, because it has been different than any time in the last, well, at least in the 18 years I've been doing this work, and the 10 years when I sat on my board before that. So close to 30 years. The resiliency of your staff, of our students, of boards, of administrators, the ability to be flexible, to pivot, is something that we really had to get much more adept at than we ever once were. Certainly the tenacity and the endurance for everyone to continue forth. How quickly it became obvious gaps in equity, not so much within North Hunterdon-Voorhees perhaps, but as you looked across the state, it became very clear very quickly. There were districts who had the technology in place and were able to pivot quickly to being remote and then to going to hybrid, and for some districts it was a lot more challenging just because of the differences across the state. Certainly the professionalism and commitment of your staff to continue teaching and learning with their kids throughout all of this. Also, the parental commitment that really was required through these past 2 years of adults and children in the community because they had to, if nothing else. The possibilities and limitations of technology. We learned how wonderful it can be, but also that it has limitations, certainly, and the critical role that relationships play in the learning process. Kids were never so glad to be back in classrooms, I think, as they were this year. And I think that speaks in large part to those connections among and between students and among and between the staff and the students, and how important that is. And then all of those opportunity gaps, those missed learning moments, those missed extracurricular opportunities that our kids missed, that fortunately this year you were really able to provide again. Graduations, proms, all of those kinds of things that we just took for granted at one point, but can no longer do. So making sure that you have clear goals to move the district forward around student achievement, especially in light of the need to fill in those opportunity gaps that kids missed or may have missed, and making sure that you have a vision of high expectations for all students, because that's important that every child has an opportunity to have access to the full curriculum and the co-curricular program to ensure that every child, every adult student meets his or her potential. So thinking about why we set goals, obviously, if you don't think about where you are and where you want to be, you're not going to make much forward motion in that direction. So really making sure that you've identified the priorities that you need to focus on, planning for implementation of programs, new initiatives, professional development. Having goals in place is essential. It also allows you to do periodic evaluation, to recalibrate if necessary, and adjust if you need to. Because times are changing. We're dealing with inflation in large part that we haven't had in more than 20 plus years. That's going to impact school budgets, it's going to impact what districts are able to do. Effective communication and collaboration among the board, the administration, the staff, the parents, all of that is a critical part in their understanding what you're working on and what your focus is. And having those goals for the district allows everyone's oars to be in the water rowing in the same direction, which I think is very important. And it speaks to the accountability to your community through your superintendent, who holds all staff accountable, and you hold the superintendent accountable. So it really works well to have effective goals, but my favorite reason is Yogi Berra. And I'm old enough to have watched him actually play in Yankee Stadium. I was, of course, about 2 years old. No, but if you don't know where you're going, you might end up someplace else. And so it really is important to have those plans in place. So we're going to talk just a little bit tonight about district goals and work on that, and then to talk about board goals. And district goals really refer to the overall operation of your district, as you know, your curriculum, your programming, your instruction, your staff, PD, your facilities, your financial, the budget. Board goals are around your processes and procedures, and they're really about how you function and operate and how you can be more effective in supporting the district goals and assisting your administration in reaching their targets by providing support. Whether it's financial support, whether it's through policy, those are all things that are part of board goals, but not district goals. Typically, you see goals in these areas, in student learning, student success, equity, health and wellness for students and staff. Of course, we know that there have been a lot of mental health issues that have emerged as a result of the pandemic for students. Facilities, again, expansion, keeping them up to date. We've never paid so much attention to air quality ever in all the years I've been doing this, but we certainly are paying attention now. So safety and security, again, that is an ongoing issue. Every time we think we're past, something happens again. And so we know that that's something we always have to be continually mindful about. Communication is becoming increasingly important to provide communications during normal times and especially during pandemic times to keep parents in the loop. It's been challenging. And then making sure you're engaging your community effectively. We need their support. You no longer have to have them approve your budget, but you do need their support to be successful and support the school district. These were your district goals for 2021-22 that we set last year. And again, you were focusing on social and emotional learning for students and staff. You were addressing your long-range facilities plan. You had the plan in place for reopening, effective distance learning, all of those pieces. And again, addressing DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, so all students have opportunities. So I spoke with your superintendent, who had said that he had developed some district goals that he shared with all of you. They're here. Solutions to your current future budget challenges. Again, looking at a referendum, which there is still money through the state. This has been a very good year for the state of New Jersey. They were having fun this week under the Golden Dome in Trenton, figuring out how to spend the excess surplus that they have. They're actually making another full pension payment to the pension system for the second time in not too many years, which is a wonderful piece for the state. But certainly they do have money for assistance in terms of facilities, and it is a wonderful time for you all to access those dollars and make use of them while they're available. Because they were there for a while, then they disappeared, and they're back again. So certainly that's a very valuable goal. Completing the audit of your policy manual, again, making sure that all of your policies and procedures are up to date. Again, critically important, it's also part of CUSAC, that's a requirement as well, the accountability system. Monitoring and addressing the effect of lost learning on student achievement. I mean, every district needs to have that as a goal, quite frankly, for 2022-23, because it's something that we're going to be working on for quite a while, I do believe, as school districts. Developing SOPs for Schedule B, C, Schedule I payments, standardizing procedures between buildings and creating efficiencies in the process. I would turn to you, Jeffrey, to explain what all those schedules are. I'm assuming the board members know, your public may not.
This is all around personnel and contractual positions relating to chaperoning and covering sporting events and stuff.
Okay. And then to conduct a successful campaign resulting in the passage of a capital project referendum. Board thoughts on the goals?
I actually really like them, because we came up with them, as, through committee. So I think it's reflective of each of the areas that we focus on every month. So we easily monitorable, easily trackable.
So seeing them all listed out like this together, it feels like maybe what's missing though is some sort of tie back to like the social and emotional learning. And like, I think that number 3, like lost instruction, can be just broadened a little bit to cover like the total impact of the last 2 years on the students and the staff. So I don't know if we can like change that wording a little bit too. Because I think that there's lost instruction, but I think that there's just sort of broader impact to that than lost instruction.
So you can add and provide social, emotional learning, and mental health supports for students to enable them to be successful. Language, something akin to that. Would that broaden it sufficiently to incorporate those pieces that are important for kids?
Let me offer a counter argument, and that is I like that there's a succinct goal around student achievement.
Okay.
I don't mind that idea, but I would prefer myself not to dilute that particular goal.
Would it be a separate goal?
Yeah.
Would you be amenable to adding them as a separate goal?
Well, don't we ordinarily just stick, that's a lofty list as we get going for the superintendent in the district. Don't we usually like to keep them at 3 or 4? And then I was going to add, we had a big discussion in curriculum about how to state that. And we talked a lot about digital citizenship and I was gonna ask, is there any way, I know Roger and I were talking about this, to use digital citizenship as a way, a support to achieve, that we could somehow intertwine loss of instruction and add digital citizenship. So basically saying that we're gonna use technology, we're gonna use a digital citizen curriculum to meet the needs, or I'd like to see if something that we could meld that goal. I know that was a goal in our committee.
So Gwen, in the committee, what came up is originally, the administration is looking at goals to move the students forward. And the original goal was to launch a digital citizenship curriculum within the district. But then there was the discussion around, we can't forget about missed learning. So, but both are still happening. It's just whether or not they're stated in the goal. Like, the administration is still going to be implementing this new curriculum to advance the students, which is what they should be doing.
It's really up to the board. You can make that student achievement goal so broad, and digital citizenship to me is not necessarily the use of technology to advance learning loss.
It's not.
Right?
Right.
Digital citizenship is about appropriate use of technology, I mean, broadly speaking, as opposed to the implementation of technology to assist in.
I don't know if it needs to be a separate goal, or, I mean, if we're talking about separate goals and adding.
Well,
I was firm on, to continue to monitor and address loss of instruction, student achievement. I felt that was a need that's ongoing, and it's something that districts are dealing with.
Well, I'd be fine if we took away 5, which seems to be somewhat redundant in number 1, and put the digital citizenship in for number 5.
I think we could take 4 and 5 and make that, they're sub goals of 1, I think,
Agreed.
right? Like,
I agree.
we're talking financial, that's fiscal. Can we
I don't know if I
vote?
agree with you on that one, on 4
Can
and
we-
1.
can we-
5 and 1 I definitely agree with, but 4 I'm not necessarily sure. I see,
That's a big
you know,
goal.
ways to become more efficient as a district, and I don't have an issue at all with, you know, finding new ways of doing something that's more efficient, and if he's gonna base it on starting with the different schedules, I think that's a good thing. I mean, we do spend a lot of time talking about these different schedules and how we're implementing them, and I see no reason why that wouldn't be a good goal for the district to take on for next year.
Yeah, I'm not saying to like take those, like, take that specific action item out. If the objective of that standardization is to create efficiencies, and creating efficiencies means saving money, then I think that falls under the banner of seeking creative solutions to address current and future budget challenges. So like, I think the referendum's an example of that. I think standardizing the operating procedures is an example of that. We're working, we have a high-level goal of seeking creative solutions, and then we are listing a couple of very tangible examples that we're gonna tackle this year. The referendum is one, and standardizing those operating procedures to drive efficiencies is two.
So why can't we bullet them under one?
That's what I'm saying.
Four and five, both
Right,
4 and 5 under
right.
one.
I'm just pushing back a little on Roger, that I think those are sub-goals under number 1.
So I would ask Katie, our BA, because each of those, my understanding of them being separated is they're very lofty and time-consuming, whereas I look at like a goal and then sub-goals. The sub-goals are not as lofty, time-consuming. They are just part of achieving the big goal. So my question to our BA is, in a sense, if we do that, we're now like giving the district 8 goals instead of, but
Yeah.
even though we don't have 8 listed.
Right, I'm trying to keep
I
it
hear
to the
you.
3 or
I
4,
hear you.
like, rather than have a list of 6. Like, so I think the easy one is 1 and 5 are the same. They both talk about the referendum, right? Like,
I would agree.
I mean,
Okay.
they literally have the same words.
So let's add those together.
So 1 and 5 are the same.
Okay.
Whether or not 4 merges in, I think is not.
No, but I do see how 5 moves into that one.
Yeah.
For creative ways to do the future budget, that could be how we do create efficiencies, that's how we actually generate revenue in the district. You know, we've had a lot of discussion over the years, how does this district create revenue? Because we don't, you know, so we have to find ways in the future that we're gonna have to meet budget shortfalls. We're gonna have to find interesting ways, we're gonna have to get creative in order to meet the gaps. Or we're gonna have to have other budget cuts.
Can someone explain to me, why are we so concerned about how many goals there are? Why is 4 better than 6?
Well,
Just for efficiency?
you can have too many goals and then you become too diffuse in your approach and
Okay.
none of them get addressed.
Okay.
But certainly, it's up to the board. If you wanted to dump 4 and 5 back into 1, then you could add the social emotional learning and mental health supports as a separate goal from the student achievement piece, which I understand your point in terms of diluting it, but at the same time, I think it is a critical component for the kids. And those would fall under the curriculum committee. 1, 4, and 5 are all going to fall on finance and facilities. We're all going to fall under there, but that would certainly seem to address it.
I think we were looking at the campaign more with the Community Relations Committee.
Okay.
So 5 is actually, because the campaign for that is not finance and facilities,
No,
it's
no.
more,
Well,
it's
it
much,
is.
well,
They
it
need
is
the
because,
information to-
yeah,
To share with the
yeah,
community.
but the communication piece of it.
Right.
And I think that was where we were going with that.
So what do we decide?
So is that acceptable? Do you want to do that, combine 5 and 4 into 1? Even though community engagement will be working on the campaign, obviously, for the successful passage of it, but the technical components of it will be done through finance and facilities, obviously. And then the 4th goal would be the social emotional learning piece. mental health
I vote for
scores.
that.
Yeah,
I do too.
that's good. It's good.
That's good,
Okay.
okay.
Tell me, we're not the easiest guys to work with.
You are, that's why I was smiling. So your superintendent will develop action plans, obviously, to implement those goals and to make them happen. And you will monitor that over the course of the board year. So the next thing we wanted to talk about was board goals. I sent you out, actually Mary did it, sent you out a copy of the self-eval. I've included the written one in a packet for you in case you didn't have an opportunity to review it ahead of time. We didn't get around to have an opportunity, I should say, to set board goals last year. So I think it is important this year to look at your board self-eval and make sure that we have board goals in place, okay? And so it's really talking about how you can be more effective, as I said before, in supporting the initiatives that the district is undertaking, and making sure that as a board, you are working as efficiently as a group. It's a little more challenging. You're a 12-member board. That makes it a little harder to do, but it is important to think about. So thinking about what professional development might assist you all, and what does your board self-evaluation, what issues arose out of there. So in looking at your board self-evaluation, I was struck by two things, several things actually, but two I think that are important. There seemed to be some, in a couple of different categories that came up around the board's monitoring of progress toward achievement of goals. And so I've also included in your packet on the left-hand side a copy of the annual calendar. One of my suggestions would be that as you move forward this board year, that you actually calendar reports on progress toward district goals quarterly, and put those on the board calendar so they will appear on your agenda 4 times, okay? So that you know that you have reviewed that, your community will know that you are staying on top of it as well. And I just think that that's a really easy solution for the board, because I know you get all of those reports, but sometimes if they're not labeled, okay, now we're going to, review where we are on goals, sometimes you may just not remember that you did it. I know that sounds silly, but you get finance and facilities reports, you get curriculum reports, but very rarely does someone say, okay, now we're going to just review the progress we've made on each of the 4 district goals. So I would suggest that putting them on your calendar now, or once a quarter, so that when we finish up next April, and you go to do the evaluation of the superintendent for the 22-23 school year, you will have all those reports in your hot little hands to be able to look at. Because I think that's always a challenge to remember it's an annual evaluation, and you have to think back to July 1, which is 2 days away, or 3 days now, or 20 days away it is from today. And the year is from July 1 until you do that evaluation. So I think that would be helpful. Also, one of the scores that was a little lower was around recognition of staff. So I would suggest, again, it sounds really simple, it doesn't have to be challenging, calendaring at least once quarterly an opportunity to recognize your staff publicly at a Board of Education meeting. And if you get those dates on the calendar now, you will be able to ask your administration for those people that you need to salute, because that happens at least quarterly. But that way you don't get to the end of another year and say, you know what, we should have saluted our staff more and honored them for the work they're doing. So I think, having that kind of calendaring sounds really simplistic, but it really does help structure it so that these little pieces don't fall through the cracks, okay? So the other areas that you identified, and it was a very good self-evaluation. I have to tell you, all of your scores were in the 3s and 4s. And really are doing a lot of really good work. But thinking about areas for the board to focus on, I think you have a real role to play as a Board of Education in communication, specifically around the referendum. You have to stay within the constraints of the law, obviously, but just in terms of being able to talk about the pieces that are contained within that referendum and why it benefits the district. Well, also talking about what its cost is, right, because you have to be balanced. But I think that the board needs to provide support, all of you, not just the people on the community engagement committee, right, but all board members around the referendum to be able to speak to it. So you may want to think about a board goal in that area. Also, additionally, perhaps considering doing an in-district onboarding process for new board members coming on. We are finding, especially because so many things have been remote for so long, that there are gaps, especially for new board members, and that doing it, at least a portion of it in district, because now you have time between the November election and January reorganization to be able to do onboarding for new folks who are coming on board that is specific to your district, sharing with them your policy manual, your contracts, your processes and procedures, to get them up to speed so that when they sit at that very first board meeting, they're more comfortable than they would be if they didn't have that. And I think that that helps to make people feel more a part of the team, because I think team building and consensus building is another area for focus for your board. Thinking in which to think about doing a board goal around. And the other part, to Jess's point a little earlier, I know regionalization is something that you may want to continue to explore as a board goal and to think about. So those are just my thoughts around, in reading your self-eval, what hit me as being things that you could consider. Certainly, they are your goals, so you need to weigh in and tell me what you would like to focus on as a board. You guys are never always quiet. I say that every year at this time.
So one thing I was thinking is, just to throw out to everyone, is training, board member training, and having it where, like it's mandatory that each board member at least take one NJSBA per quarter, and it's tracked and logged. I know. To keep developing ourselves and to hear from someone else other than just our own voices, the messaging.
I have a similar goal to that, which is just in order to make sure that we're, that we are always expanding our knowledge of what's happening in education, to pursue training, so that aligns with that idea too.
So do you think we could take, because I sort of like the idea of the new board member onboarding, formalizing that a little bit. I
That's
think
something Deb's been an advocate of for a long time.
I think we've
I
all-
have started, I'm not gonna lie.
Most of us have been through that semi-recently, I guess. So can we just have like an overarching, like a goal, I'm sort of into like goals with sub-goals. But,
Clearly.
Clearly, you
like-
like
Trying to get 12
subcategories.
goals in
Like
one.
board professional development, sort of, like board
I like
PD. And
I
then
like
like
that.
one element of it is new board member onboarding, and another is a more developing, because I don't think we've got to set the, like, one class per quarter. I'm not, maybe that's it, but like
That's not bad.
developing a
Not everybody's gonna attend.
developing a meaningful commitment to ongoing board member
Needs to be
education.
measurable. It needs to be
It's
tangible, like.
easier now than ever, because most of the programs are available, they're taped.
They're
They're
virtual.
webinars.
So my view is if you're
Yeah.
setting it one per quarter, you're setting it up for like.
Like, if you mandate it, I think it's more, I think all of us go, just, at least one.
Yeah, oh yeah, at least one, but like.
I mean, right?
Not everybody's going once
I
per
mean,
quarter,
and it's
but-
been virtual, so I think if you mandate it, I think you are setting yourself. People, and to say this, there are people that, put their time into the boards, work diligently, and we all have other day jobs, and just can't do things. And when they go from virtual back to face, if they do that, and we don't have this offering, I just don't think it's to mandate it. People are gonna do it, they're gonna do it. but I don't think we should be mandating how many.
I think we will continue to offer both in most instances.
And it's been great being virtual, because now you can attend many, you know, you might be in a bind, you're in a pinch, you can't get to that place, but you can do it virtually.
Well, and they are archived on the website. So if there was something
Right.
that was of particular interest that you wanted to see, that you didn't have an opportunity, like someone mentioned in there about parliamentary procedure, well, there was a webinar. So you could go watch the webinar in your slippers and jammies, right, on your own time when it was convenient. And that to me would be professional development for you individually as board members if that was an interest that you thought would be helpful. You know? But it's up to all.
Unless instead of mandating it, maybe we track it. So we're not mandating that you attend something, but if you do, does the school board track who takes the class? Or is there maybe a way for us to report in to self-track
We do
instead of making it mandated?
We do track courses. The things, once they're archived, you don't receive academy credit. So when you do it live or virtual for an academy credit program, we track that.
Right,
But when we record them and then archive them so that board members have access to them, you don't gain the credit.
right.
And they don't
Okay.
track it.
So yes, they're tracked, some, but some are not
Right.
tracked per se.
How long are they?
It depends on the program, generally not even more than an hour.
I think the only one that I usually go to is the law forum, and that's like 3 hours.
So if
Everything's
you
an hour.
really feel strongly about this, why don't we make it part of the board meeting?
I was gonna say too.
Pick a
one of-
night, we'll put up on a display and make everybody sit here and do it. If you feel very strongly.
I'm not saying I
that's
feel
the way
strongly
you
about it,
wanna
I'm
do
saying
this.
rather than mandate it, track it. That way we're not,
Well, what's the difference?
What's the difference? You're still
What's the
Well,
difference?
but
You're
you're
gonna call
self-report-
somebody out in it either way, if they're not doing it, they're not
true,
doing it. You're
true.
gonna expose them as for not, oh, you said you're gonna go do
And it
this,
doesn't
you're
make
doing
them a poor board member.
So
No.
one way of thinking of this would be the same way we think of teachers, right? When we increase expectations or we ask them to do something in addition, we offer more support. So maybe
We'll pay
if
you
we're
more. We'll pay you more.
yeah, perfect. I can't wait for that. If we're saying
Pay me less,
we
please.
want to prioritize board learning and making sure we're up to date with what's happening in education, we can do something more altogether. Like bring someone in to do trainings on it.
And we're all seeing it and
For all
hearing
of
it
us.
together.
Yeah, and then we
Yeah.
can even discuss it or come up with an action item. How can we apply this in our district?
So the only thing I would just call out to that is then that board meeting will be longer, which I know some people complain
Like by
about
an hour?
that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It is what it is, but it'll be
All right,
pre-planned.
Saturday mornings, specify Saturday morning, 8 o'clock, we'll all come in here and watch a video.
or we do it virtual.
Together.
That's
Yeah.
fine, as long as we're thinking about how to apply it, apply the knowledge to us. I think that would be the really particularly useful part. How can we make that useful here to support our students?
I like that.
And then is it once a quarter still or not?
I like quarterly, I don't know how
I
other
do
people
too.
feel about that. I know it's a lot, but
It's a
that's
lofty
what
goal.
we're doing.
Why don't we
A
start
lot- a
off
lot
twice a
of
year to see how that works out?
That works. I'm flexible.
I'm in NJSB all the time, so like for me, this is nothing.
Biannual, right? So
Yeah.
twice a year.
Yeah.
Okay. Does that work? Anything else that hits you that you ought to work on?
Well, I would like us to have a board goal that sort of formalize around exploration of regionalization. Like some sort of wording around driving that forward with the sending districts.
Collaborate with your sending districts?
Mm-hmm.
To go with that, probably, maybe another goal would be somewhere around the vocational, trying to do a better job, or not better job, but how can we incorporate the VOTEC into what we're doing as a district that will integrate it into our system, or somehow, we're more in line with everything that they're doing, with what we're doing, so that we feel like we're one.
So do you think that's totally separate? Like, like somehow optimize the investment in the Polytech. Like a different goal would be like figuring out how to leverage the partnership with the Polytech district to, somehow better benefit our district. Like that, I think that's different than the conversation around really like taking steps to drive the conversation on K-12 regionalization. Like I think I personally think that's its own thing, different than.
I like them both. Not as one. I agree.
I'm
with you.
suggesting they're
Two
two.
separate.
Yeah.
I was suggesting they're two
Oh, I
separate.
thought you were,
No,
I
no,
thought you
no,
were,
no.
I thought you were saying.
I wasn't doing a sub-bullet.
I thought you were doing.
No, I was
The
just, she was
sub-bullet
writing, I
man
went
thought
on,
you.
That's your thing.
That's
Sub-
exactly.
I was not sub-bullet, this is a brand new bullet.
Once you start with the sub-bullets,
I
you
don't
like.
think it's.
Okay, so, you want to reword that?
Which one?
Oh,
You
that-
said something
Roger.
about leverage.
Roger, the
Roger.
Polytech,
Leverage the Polytech.
Or
vocational.
Integration and leveraging the value of Polytech into our campus.
Can we say partner with, maybe?
Sure, partner's fine.
Start partnering with them?
That's friendlier.
That's friendly.
73, right?
Will you speak up if you think any?
Yeah, that's what.
Regionalization is different than
Cases.
working on the Polytech, that's totally different, yeah, okay.
Very good.
Yep.
Anything else? I mean, I think those are three pretty lofty goals, but I think you also have to be prepared to go out there and support that referendum too.
And attend meetings at night. Trainings. So excited.
I'm so devastated. Is there anything else that you want to add in terms of?
Roger, I think we should put as a sub-note
No, we don't need any, I don't need any sub-bullets.
to the training that Roger will be selecting what the biannual topics will
Oh, and I
be.
get to select them?
Yeah, I think you should
I
be
like that.
part of that
On
selection
the
committee.
subcommittee.
On a subcommittee as a sub-goal,
There you go.
you're gonna select the training.
I had one, oh, sorry, go ahead. I had one more idea that I had noted when I was thinking about this, is just, it's around like communication and transparency with the community and the board-community relationship. We're just talking more education about what the role of the board is. I don't have any brilliant ideas on how to word it, and I don't have as long of a history here as many of you do, so I don't know if there are practices we could bring back that worked really well that we haven't done because of COVID, things that we could just increase that, a positive relationship between board and community. Any thoughts? I don't know if it needs to be its own goal, but it's something that I thought of.
I think it's an ongoing, consistent goal that we're always trying to achieve every year. I don't think it's something that we don't try every year to kind of improve on. I think at this point in time, I think, we're better than we ever have in the past. I think the community relations team is doing a really good job of getting the word out. I think Marin's doing a fantastic job of getting the weeklies, the email communications out. I think we're now using Twitter, we're using Facebook, we're using all the different social medias that we've ever had in the past. So I think, from my perspective, we're in a really good spot, and we've been doing, a fantastic job of getting the information out. Jeff's giving out, monthlies to us, so, I think we're in really good, but that doesn't mean that we can't improve. But I'm not necessarily sure which area I would pick as to a center to say, we can do this better. I would kind of leave that up to the community relations team to kind of find an area that maybe they think that they should, work on that would be better for us as a goal. But I personally think we're in a really good spot. I think we're doing a great job. Everybody else, and maybe this is create a survey monkey, do a survey and figure out from the community what they would want to see that we do better.
I would thought about team building as a board. Build on our team building for the year, work on that.
That's number two.
You want me to spend more time with you now?
No, I think it's a matter of
That's not gonna happen during the biannual training that
No,
Roger
but
is
you-
going
Well,
to
I was the one
conduct?
last year who suggested we meet and do a
Well, we used to do a
team build,
retreat.
team bonding retreat.
We
I
used to do this
suggested the
over
retreat,
retreats
and I got
in the
laughed
old
at.
days.
Well, you could
Just-
make it part of your biannual training. I mean, you have the opportunity,
yes.
right?
Perfect.
So I
You're
would
safe.
think that might be.
Attend a biannual training including
But you can
team
have
building.
it, that's what.
Yeah.
As one of them.
Link those together.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
And maybe you don't do them at both sessions, one of the sessions
It's a
is.
team building. That's great, yeah.
Because the need for that did come through kind of loud and clear, I thought, in the self-evaluation
Me too.
comments.
Me too.
We'll leave the second one as to be determined. You had something you wanted to say?
I was just gonna mention that you have strongly hinted, you think, a goal around the referendum. You know, it's like, aren't you gonna consider this?
You're going to end up doing it whether you make it a goal or not,
Yeah.
But,
okay? So,
It is part of the district goals.
right. The
right,
point there
but
would,
the
I
board
guess, would
also
be
has
is,
a supporting role to play.
Yes.
Right?
As a communicator?
As a communicator, because it's part of your two-way communication. So, making sure that if you create, for example, many districts will create an FAQ to put up on their website on a referendum. So making sure as an individual board member, you're familiar with the answers on the FAQ. So if you're stopped, at McDonald's or on the sideline of a game, you can respond. And that's what I mean by you have a role to play in this, to make sure that you're up to date and well-informed and can speak intelligently about what's included and why you're doing it and all of those pieces. I'm not suggesting you have to, stand on street corners and hand out literature, but I
We
do
used to
think-
go house to house to deliver the message in the old days for the referendum.
Yes, I know.
Look at Gwen.
That's a
Roger,
great Saturday
are you
Friday.
suggesting that be a goal?
And
Is
then
that team building?
And then they invented
That's
Facebook.
team
Yeah.
building.
Yogi Berra was on that night.
Yeah, that was.
Robert, now you're giving all of that to you, so.
All right, so let's add, so
So maybe-
I'm good with adding some, like,
Yes.
a goal like that.
I like that.
those of you who've been through referendums before, has it been a goal, or is it just kind of? It
Always,
seems
always been a goal.
reasonable that another option could just be, this is part of the community relations committee's job.
It's not always a goal.
I think-
It's not always listed as a goal, excuse me. Like it's,
I think this is a lot.
it's a
I
lot
just-
right
And
there.
I don't think it has to be a goal, and I would say that the community engagement committee is going to be responsible in large part for largest pieces of that. But as individual board members, I just want you to be able to be effective communicators out there on what's included in the referendum so that you can support it because you're all from different communities too, right? So it's not as though you have one compact group of people that you're talking to. You're talking to people in multiple municipalities and towns. So I think that that's why it probably occurred to me in this instance, it might be a little more important because you may all shop in different places, you live in different places. It's a little different in a regional than in a non-regional district where everyone's from Alamucci or Boone or, wherever.
Gwen, yeah, and to Brian's point, I think compared to other referendum that I'm familiar with, this one doesn't seem to be.
It's not as scary.
Well, exactly, because we're doing it because it's a procedural thing. We're not looking to bond for long term. We're just doing this in order to, like Gwen talked about, the money that is still available in Trenton to access that money through this referendum, and then we would immediately pay this off. It's just a mechanism to tap that state funding. So we haven't prioritized it like all our eggs in this basket, like we need to get this through for the upgrade the libraries and fix the roof and all that other stuff. This is just like a procedural thing, but the same token, it can be, the perception in the public, they hear that word referendum, it's a scary word, so we have to make sure that our messaging is on point to that it is just a procedural thing to access that money, so.
I think that's why it's more important, like this time, like because it's such a very specific objective and like we all should be on the hook for being able to communicate that message like clearly, like and accurately and succinctly, right? Like that.
That's why I think it should be,
Yeah.
I agree, it should be a goal, just as a reminder.
And not take it for granted.
Because I've been through dozens of referendums in different districts, and the ones that pass are the ones that have the support of not just the superintendent, that everybody's kind of engaged, it makes it, it's just word of mouth.
And that's really what my point is, that you all need to engage,
Yeah.
whether it's, you know, what you're describing, right? Or 1 million or 10 million, whatever it is. And I'm not suggesting it's anywhere near that, I don't mean that, but you need the support of all of your board to make it successful. Those ones that are successful have the support of their full board,
Let's add it.
active support.
Let's add it. Number 4.
Yeah, we gave
That's it.
Jeff 12 and
All right, we gave Jeff 17.
That's plenty.
6 with some bullets.
Sub-goals.
That's plenty.
This is a whole new category for us, sub-goals.
All right, we're done.
We don't need more than 4 goals.
No, we
And
don't.
I run out of time because I was watching the clock. I haven't been around this long for no good reason, I know. So, okay, well, thank you very much. As always, it is truly a pleasure to be here. And I wish all of you a very peaceful and healthy summer. Get some rest, guys, because September's coming quick. So enjoy the summer months, okay? And if you need anything, you know how to find me. I can tell you how to access the recorder.
Thanks, Gwen.
Thank you, Gwen.
Thank
Gwen,
you, Gwen.
will you be sending those to us?
I will be putting it together in a memo format.
Thank
and
you.
I will get it to you.
All right. Moving on with the agenda, can I call for a motion and a second to approve agenda item 8.1, which is the minutes from the May 24th, 2022 regular school board meeting?
Motion.
Second.
Dan? Deb? And this is does anyone have any questions regarding the minutes? Okay. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
You're absent. Yep. Thanks, Brad. At this point in time, we'd like to have the chief school administrators report, please.
Graduation ceremonies were held on June 15th for the class of 2022. North Hunterdon graduated 397 seniors and Voorhees graduated 236. We wish them well in all of their future endeavors and thank you to the board members who attended graduation. Summer enrichment program is running this week, June 27th through the 30th. 5 courses on various topics were offered at each high school to rising freshmen, sophomores, and juniors. Courses are taught by our high school teachers. STEM camp and Spanish immersion camp will run August 1st, 2nd, and 3rd at North Hunterdon. Incoming freshmen from any of our sending districts are invited to sign up. And I have an update from Polytech. Their construction documents are about 80% complete. They hope to have those done in July and go out to bid with groundbreaking now scheduled for September. The HIV report, May we had 2 incidents investigated, both were unfounded, and then just a reminder on the last report in May was that there were no incidents.
Well, that's
Okay.
a first.
And I need a motion to.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions? Nays? Motion passes.
And the monthly reports are attached for your information.
Just want to remind everybody that July 26, 2022 is our regular board meeting at 7 o'clock in the district office. And that July 25th, 2022 at 4 p.m. is the deadline to submit nominating petitions for the board vacancies to the county clerk's office. At this point in time, I'd like to review the committee reports. Maren, are you going to do community relations?
I was not in attendance, Jeff and Rich were.
Okay. Who was in it? Who was, Kim, were you in attendance at community
I
relations?
actually got logged on late, so it was a few minutes. I don't know who else was.
I think it was just me.
Brian?
No, Brian.
Brian.
I'm not in community,
Brian, do you have the,
regulations.
I don't have the minutes, so I didn't get
I
them
can
from
just-
Tara.
I didn't take minutes.
I can do it.
Okay,
Community Relations Committee met on Thursday. Mrs.
23rd.
Mrs. Vince was not in attendance. All the other committee members were there. Kim signed on late. The only thing we discussed was the campaign for the referendum being a committee goal, and that in August we would present to the board the plan for the campaign.
perfect. Moving on, curriculum?
Curriculum Committee met on June 22nd. All members were in attendance. We discussed 4 topics. As usual, the board agenda items were discussed, and there was a further conversation about home instruction. Both Rich Brown and Mr. Bender explained the actual process, the approvals that need to be in place, and then the check-ins, not only throughout, but the post-check-ins for home instruction. So there was a lot of clarity surrounding that. The second item was the district goal, the curriculum goal that we already kind of spoke to with Gwen, coming up with what the committee agreed and presented, which was approved this evening. The third item discussed was strategic planning. The only item not completed in the curriculum portion of the strategic action plan is creating a transition coordinator, and that was not completed because it was determined that that position was not needed. It is not necessary, so to save the district money on that. And that the administration will be starting the next strategic planning cycle next year. And then the last item discussed was supposed to be like our monthly check-in with what's going on in the district. It was originally planned that it would have been the technology survey and the climate survey, but they were not available to the district yet. They were not completed or sent. So instead we flipped and we did the final grades for the school year of 2021-2022. There is around 65% of the grades in the entire district were A's, and 1% of all grades in the district, the final grade in the district, were F's. And when we just dove into that 1%, it was mostly within the math. The highest percentage of that 1% was math classes. So we discussed that. The final grades are consistent with the final grades from last year. They are in sync with the percentages from last year. And then the action items is we will obviously be continuing to monitor them. Mr. Brown discussed the action plans in place and continuing to support struggling students through the response to intervention program that's in place. And that was our committee. Does
Anyone have any questions for Deb?
You forgot we're not allowed to say learning loss at all.
Oh, thank you for that, Roger. I did actually highlight that. So we did, in terms of the district goal, we did clarify, thanks to Rich Brown, that there is definitely, if you see a lot of the research, just making sure that as a board, we understand that it's actually lost learning or lost instruction or missed learning. It's not learning loss. They didn't lose learning during that period of COVID. They actually
Lost
missed
the
instruction.
opportunity to learn.
Right, so that's important for us to have that distinction and use the right terminology as a board. Thank you for that.
See, I do pay attention.
You
but
do?
You don't think I do.
Sean, you want to help us out with facilities, finance, and transport?
Sure. Facilities, Finance, Transportation met on the 20th. Everybody was in attendance except for Tara. The first agenda item was the district goal setting, so we've already talked a lot about that. I don't need to go into it any further. Second agenda item was talking about the inflation as it's pertaining to transportation. We're seeing increase of 30% for our routes. So that leads into, okay, where can savings be had? There's been some further investigation into, what are some of the underutilized routes. One of the areas seriously considering is eliminating the 315 runs. It would result in roughly a $200,000 savings, and those runs are very underutilized, and the fact that we have some online tutoring available that's new to address, that's one of the reasons people utilize that bus is for extra learning. So, you could see that coming in if not next month, but a recommendation later this summer for eliminating of those 315 runs. Additionally, we talked about the solar projects. Voorhees now is online, the solar panels, and North Hunterdon will be going online in July. So
It's exciting.
it's exciting. I guess that's taking a little longer with the curvature of the roof over the gymnasium at North Hunterdon was a little bit more of a problem. But anyway, we'll have that done soon. Also, the summer projects are underway, progressing nicely. So no hiccups there. And the last thing we discussed were just some of the routine agenda items that you see tonight on our agenda, such as renewing for food service, copiers, the Class 3 and SRO contracts with the municipalities, things of that nature. But other than that, it was a pretty short meeting. Any questions?
So the 315 buses, that's the quote-unquote late bus? And so that would mean students, not only for the tutoring or help, after-school help, but also clubs, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they would now have to figure out a way home.
But you're saying they're underutilized? They're-
Correct, that's our,
Like single digits, when they are utilized, because we only have a couple kids on them, but oftentimes they're leaving empty.
So kids are finding other ways home
Yes.
already from
Yes.
their clubs and tutoring, and so these buses are virtually non-utilized.
Right.
Almost.
Would we ever consider, and this is probably, this is probably silly because every sport ends differently, but instead of it leaving at 3:15, would we ever consider pushing it out so that like if it's just practice, they can go home? And then this way, the people who stayed later for club just stay a little later and do homework, but then you get some of the sports practices driven home as well?
well, the late buses,
Or killed.
they were eliminated a long time ago,
yeah.
which addressed all the athletic ending around 5 o'clock. Those buses,
But do all the athletics end at that time? They're all
No,
different
they're-
times.
That's, it would be like hit or miss that day.
Is this like year to year though? I mean,
They've been underutilized.
they've been just declining every year?
I think the reality, though, is that we're facing a dramatic increase in the cost of the transportation, so we're looking for opportunities to cut the costs.
It's not only that, it's bus drivers.
Okay.
We have a shortage.
right, yeah, right, and then also at the same time that these buses are on these empty runs, our sporting events are delayed because they can't get bus drivers to go to, the away meets or matches or whatever. And so it's, you're fighting for that limited pool of bus drivers at that same time.
That's a great point. There were tons of games, home and away games that were canceled, so then we would have buses to prevent that. That's a good point.
Plus, we're already offering the services after school with the teachers, face-to-face, on a Zoom call with the teachers. So there is nothing that's being lost at this point in time, except for the fact that they're not going to drive home on a bus. At that point.
I would just be curious to see, like, if our club enrollment decreased a lot, if that was why. It probably isn't because they're underutilized. That's probably not going to stop kids from doing clubs, but if for some reason we saw it fall off, we could just note this may be part of the reason.
Yeah, that's the piece that I don't know that it's gonna get replaced by Zoom calls, is the clubs.
Just
But
so-
the data's the data.
Yeah.
If
Right.
they're underutilized, then that means, and I haven't heard that the clubs are, single digit, or unattended. that means that they're getting home somewhere else. We want to,
I mean, just as another aside, most of the buses are underutilized now anyway. We still have to pay for transportation for all the kids in the district, but our buses are still running at a very low utilization rate anyway, but we're still running.
In the
It's,
morning.
it's a problem we
Yeah,
have
the
as a
morning
district
rate
because,
is-
you know, our juniors and seniors are driving. We still make access for them all. And even, I mean, I don't know if you've seen the lines out here on Regional Road and on 31 in the morning, but people drive their kids to school, and yet we're still running the buses, and they can't, and we still have to have, each kid has to have a bus seat. So we're still running full buses at, you know, with 2 or 3 kids on them, but we still have to run the routes, state law.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a problem for us all the way around, and it's an enormous expense, and it's only gonna increase as we move along.
And to Roger's point, we also discussed interest in drafting a letter, resolution to the Department of Education, encouraging them to allow us, like an opt-out for transportation, so that we didn't have to, so parents, if they knew they were gonna drive their kids all the time, they could opt out, and then we wouldn't have to provide that seat with so many buses that are only being partially used. So, I'm sure other districts are facing the same pressure. We have to get creative to, and it seems like such a waste to have all those partially used buses running day after day after day. So maybe we can they can put their heads together and find a solution.
I think we want to signal that strongly that we're going to, if we decide, the decision's not tonight, right? You said you're going to bring it.
Right, it's not on the agenda, but it would be later, sometime prior to school starting.
So if we decide to stop the late bus, we want to signal that well ahead of time.
Earlier.
Well, it would be
Yeah.
prior to
Yeah.
school year.
Sneak it up.
No, it would be announced prior to school year.
Well, I think we ought to do it now, personally.
We
Get
don't
the
do-
parents thinking about the
We will
fact.
be announcing it in July, so that all the parents are aware, and then in August is when we approve all the bus runs. So it would give parents an opportunity to provide feedback about how they felt about those 3:15 runs.
Any other questions on that topic?
Just asking with feedback, are you gonna be implementing a survey for the parents, or how do you propose having the parents comment?
I would just ask them to email us.
Because there are students that we still have to be cognizant of that don't have that kind of transportation, or their friends picking them up or driving them, and it is, they're both working parents, so.
Okay. Ryan, are you prepared to report out on personnel?
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
Shall I prepare my comments? The committee met virtually on June 22nd at 6:30. The meeting adjourned at 7:10. All committee members were in attendance, as well as Mr. Bender, Jess Fiodo, and Mr. Projects. We reviewed and discussed the personnel portion of the agenda, and the only other thing we discussed was a proposal from the North Hunterdon Theater, North Hunterdon, to run a theater camp that will take place from August 15th to 19th, 3 hours per day for 4 days, with the 5th day being a longer 8-hour day, culminating in several scenes of a musical that will be performed for family and friends. This camp is open to any rising freshmen and North Hunterdon students. That's it.
I just had a question about that program. Is that just like for acting, or is it like for stage and background?
That's a good question. Does anyone have the answer to that question? I'm not sure.
I think they're
I
doing
think
all.
it's all of it, actually.
It's all
I
of it.
think it's
It's
all
all
elements
encapsulated.
of
Okay.
production. That was
That's
my
great.
impression.
That's really good.
All right,
Any questions?
bring us home, Rob.
All right.
Policy and school security.
The Policy and School Security Committee met on June 20th at 5:30 PM. All committee members were in attendance with the exception of Dan. Spanton was not able to make it. We talked briefly about the second reading of the 10 mandatory policies that are on the agenda tonight. There were no concerns raised. We have 2 mandatory first and only regulations that are on tonight's agenda. There were no concerns or discussion around those. We talked about the district goal that we coalesced around tonight about completing the Strauss SMA audit for the remaining board policies, so that this policy audit began in 2018. But we were, have it as a district goal and the focus of the policy committee to make sure we drive through and conclude that this year. We talked about policy and regulation 1240, which is the superintendent evaluation. And it was decided, it was concluded that we were going to follow that policy as revised earlier this year for this year's superintendent evaluation process, which we did tonight, and that we would continue to look for opportunities to streamline and make that process as effective as possible going forward. We also talked about next steps regarding potential regionalization, and it was decided that the level of interest among sending districts seemed high at the board president's meeting, so I'm not sure how that was actually a policy committee discussion, but it sort of felt a little policy-ish, like it would be a good policy to be regionalized. But, so anyway, we have that on our goal too, and those were the topics that were discussed during the policy committee meeting. Any questions?
So for next month's agenda, are you going to add on re-evaluating the CSA evaluation in terms of the implementation of the CSA evaluation?
Right, the
President only.
the regulation related to the delivery of the CSA evaluation is something that I think we decided to re-talk about
Next month.
next month.
Perfect. Thank you.
Well, I have two questions. One is, the policies, 3161 and 4161 about examination for cause. When I read them, what it appeared to be the case is that if the staff member that was being subject to examination for cause wanted to have the board hear about this, there was a process to do that. What happens in between the time they're at, the letter or is told them, hey, you're going to be subject to this policy, and let's say the next board meeting is 29 days later? What happens to the individual in between those two time periods? Do they continue working, or are they suspended until, well, the suspension may not be the only remedy, but what happens in between that, or is there a special board meeting called?
It would be situational, depending on what the concern was. If it was, for example, a custodian who was having difficulty meeting the physical requirements, we would send them out for a physical examination, but maybe their responsibility would be altered in the meantime while we were waiting for the results. If a staff member has emotional issues, and we're concerned about the safety of the kids, they would be suspended until we had the results of the report, and then reinstate or continue the suspension.
So you'll take action regardless of when the next board meeting happens. They may ask to, because the policy states that they can ask for a board hearing or to be heard at the board, that will happen, but your actions will take precedence over waiting to the next board meeting.
Right.
Okay, it wasn't obvious enough. And the second question I had was on regulation 9320, which is around cooperation with law enforcement. It was super revised. Like, the entire thing was basically struck and a new regulation written. Can you speak to, like, was this another case where our advisors said, hey, you guys, this was an old one, you don't have it up to date, you need to revamp it? Or was it, there's something deeper going on?
This was changed as a result of
Oh.
state action. So the state changed the requirements surrounding that memorandum of agreement, and then Strauss Esme just followed suit to get policy made.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions on policy? I'm not aware that there were any meetings for the New Jersey school boards or Hunterdon County school boards. Were there any meetings that were held last month? I didn't think so. Attended? No. Okay. Oh, we can, I think we should talk about the sending district meeting.
Okay.
Because it was really productive and well-attended. So Deb, if you want to report out on that, that'd be great.
So Jessica and I met with the sending district president and vice presidents on Thursday, June 9th. Actually, it was supposed to be in May, but I think you remember from last month, we pushed it out to June, asking Gwen Thornton to attend and actually do a presentation to not only all the sending districts, but us on the regionalization and what is it, what is the legalities involved, and what are the steps and processes and procedures that would have to be followed. So Gwen gave a very impactful and detailed presentation for us. It was excellent, easy to follow. She talked about the feasibility study that would need to happen first, the impact on taxpayers positively, and the impact on our curriculum, again, positively. So we talked about having possibly a steering committee of board members of the districts involved. That's actually one of the requirements, once it's, that's part of the feasibility study requirement. Gwen went over really just high-level positives and negatives. High-level positives, state pays for the feasibility study and the election costs. Return of some state aid, the S2 funds that are being taken away from us that we talk about every year. The districts that agree to go into this feasibility study, you are eligible to get each year a percentage of that S2 funds back, but you have to be in that feasibility study in good faith, because there were some districts that entered it just to try to get the S2 funds, had the state pay all the money for the feasibility study, and then said, no, we have no interest. So they phased it into now 2 phases, and in order for you to continue to receive that aid, you have to say, yes, if it was today, we would do it, and then you go into phase 2. The regionalization, a key point, it's actually a 10-year phase-in. So this way we can take into account staff members that retire. So you don't have to worry about so many people resigning. But we're also in a better position right now because there's such a shortage that this is actually something that can help us as well. And another key point, it only requires a majority of 1 constituent district to approve to move forward. So there's been some legal changes.
Yeah, there's been some changes as to, it's not a unanimous consensus now.
You don't need all the sending districts,
Nope.
you just need 1.
So the negatives that were discussed, there is a penalty, once you go through the entire process and you start it, if you withdraw from the regionalization within the first 5 years, you actually have to pay back all those S2 funds and all the money. So there's misconception on that. You only have to pay back if you withdraw, there's no cost to the districts other than that. Only submitting, trying to think of some negatives. That really was, that was it. So the end result, what happened with us after we all met, is that we do have some sending districts now starting a email chain amongst the sending districts, and Jessica and I, the presidents and vice presidents, saying, okay, now that we've had this meeting, who's interested? And so far we've had 2 districts.
3.
So now 3?
Yeah.
This email just started this week. So there is some interest. We said that, of course, we would be willing to have conversations with any district that is interested. So we're progressing with that, which is a good thing. And it is on the agenda for the next sending district meeting. It will be one of the topics that we discuss.
Yeah.
And then we're already in achievement for one of our goals this year. At graduation, Jeff and I saw the Polytech came to Voorhees, and we just discussed with the superintendent and the board president there if they would like to be included in our sending district meetings, and they said yes. So we are starting to include them already. That was positive.
And Deb, just to know, I know I mentioned it last month, you guys should get in contact with, to have, at your articulation meeting, South Hunterdon. They went through this whole process, and they had, Gwen actually led that was probably like 7 years ago. She led that meeting. There's some great info people you can talk to, that went through it, and the bumps in the road that they hit. You know,
She
things that we
did
can
mention, yeah.
avoid if this were to go forward.
Wasn't that a state mandate though? The state forced that.
Yeah, it was, but they still have to go through the process, so they have many bumps in the road, a lot of money issues and other, but it was great. You'll get great feedback.
Gwen had mentioned them, like you said, she was part of that. What she also pointed out to us is some of the bumps, they've now been eliminated
Yep.
from the process, which is fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah, but if you can get some of them that were involved, just to speak to the group,
Yeah.
you know, hands-on.
Okay.
To get to the next step, how many districts would you need to express interest in doing this?
Only need one,
We only need one, and we have 3.
so
But then that impacts what we look like, right? So, you know, because then there's all questions of like, well, how does it impact the high school districts? So, for now, we have the 3, and we agreed to be part of their conversations, but we're hoping more.
And so procedural, you could do that 2 or 3 districts at a time, and then all of a sudden, you know, a year or two later.
there was
Discuss that,
a
yeah.
qualifier about if the surrounding districts regionalized and the one didn't.
Yeah,
Um,
Yeah.
And there was a penalty for that one who did not
exactly. So
comply.
what starts to happen is, as districts do this, if you don't, and then you opt that you want to do later, there's some financial penalties to that district. So even
But
more.
looking, we have 12 sending districts, so what you're saying is, right now you have 3, so you could potentially begin. What happens?
Based on their request,
So they have to start.
they
it.
would request it.
The sending districts have to trigger
And
this.
what about the other 9 sending districts that are not interested at this time?
They don't,
Well, they haven't answered yet, so we don't know that for sure.
yeah.
They have to attend their board meetings and start talking to their administration and their board. So
So would-
TBD on.
Would we reorganize, I mean, I'm trying to get through, like, let's say, talk about those 3 boards, let's say, for instance, they are interested, would we reorganize our board?
We didn't get that far.
Okay,
And we couldn't because that's part of the feasibility study.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, so we
the
wouldn't
feasibility
make that
study, which
decision.
takes 5 years to do.
Yeah.
So this is, yeah,
It's the 5 full, but that's part 1 and part 2.
it's part of the 10-year plan.
It's part 1 and part 2.
It's a 10-year project,
A study takes 5 years?
according to Gwen. It does,
I
that's
don't-
what she said it did.
Yeah.
It
could take 5 years.
It's steps to do it.
I mean, a demographic study that goes out 10 years doesn't take that long.
It could take 5 years. It doesn't have to. And, you know.
It's an interesting
what-
discussion.
She said what expedites it is if the districts cooperate, because the company doing the feasibility study, again, that we do not pay for, when they call and say, give us your staffing charts, give us this, give us that, if the school reciprocates very quickly, they go through the process quickly. If the school doesn't respond for a very long time, it just pushes it out, so.
Was there any conversation? I think the biggest factor that is just a sticking point is the transportation. Our sending districts are spread out so far. I mean, you look at Bethlehem Township and where we are, it's far.
So when they.
You don't eliminate any schools. So the K through 8s, part of the feasibility study is to determine if the K through 8s will stay open, but they're not eliminating
Not
those.
necessarily
Yeah,
eliminating
they're
any
not
school,
eliminating
like,
anything, yeah.
Yeah.
You're consolidating the administration and the oversight, and then
The
depending.
boards.
And the boards, right, but like in terms of, I think trying to get to I think the basic premise of trying to regionalize the organization of the districts, we're not like immediately, I don't think, proposing that anybody's looking for cutting schools out or
No.
closing buildings or anything like that. I think we're
Right.
looking to gain the efficiencies of operating.
And if school districts were to say that to you, let's say it's, you know, we have a struggling district saying, along with that, we'd like to be absorbed, we'd like somehow, was that a discussion?
Absorbed into,
No, just in general, like, you know, Califon, we've had other schools where they're struggling,
right,
you know, maybe they're, I'm just saying, just posing. What
right,
would we do?
which they were part of
Was
the
that a
conversation.
discussion?
They're
So
part of the
It
discussion.
would be that, like, the feasibility study would look at it and say, okay, so we hypothetically have these two K through 8s, so can we merge, or do we even need to, but can we merge there? And then, so it wouldn't be that they'd come onto this campus.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
I'm just talking about that.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
So it was very interesting, and Gwen cleared up a lot of misinformation that the
And there's a
sending
lot of
districts
new
had.
information she gave.
Yeah.
So that it's not the same regionalization conversation we had years ago.
That might be interesting for, if Gwen has that
Presentation.
presentation.
Yeah, she was
Give
amazing.
it to the board.
We could ask her if we could send the link, right?
I actually just emailed all of you the recording.
Oh, great, so there's a recording of the meeting.
Oh, Marin's one step
Does this
ahead.
qualify for my training?
It does, Roger, it does.
See, quarter one is done, it's not so hard.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marin.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Maren. All right, moving on. Now is an opportunity for public comment. During this portion of the meeting, the public is invited to address the school board with questions or comments. The public is requested to sign the register provided for this purpose and to state their name, municipality of residence, group affiliation if applicable, and direct their comments to the school board president. While all comments will be considered and a response will be forthcoming if and when appropriate, the school board members will not respond to the speakers at the time of their appearance. The public comment period will be a maximum of 30 minutes in length unless there's unusual circumstances. Those appearing will be allocated 3 minutes to speak, and no one will be permitted to speak twice until those that have not yet had an opportunity to speak have had a turn. Is there anyone who would like to speak during public comment?
Good evening. Hi, my name is Evie Roderer. I'm from Greenwich Township. I'm a New Jersey taxpayer, which is one of the reasons I'm here. Just concerned about the children and their education. Thank you for giving of your time to be here.
I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing you. What is your name and your affiliation?
My name is Evie Roderer. I live in Greenwich Township.
Okay.
And then I was thanking all of you for the work that you do. I do have some concerns for the children, some of the things that are soon to be taught. I guess first I have a question, and I apologize, I have not been here before, so I do not know if you have done this. Are you planning in the summertime to contact parents to have an open forum with the parents to inform them of all the things that will be coming in the new health standards that you will have to be teaching in the fall? Because I'm sure that they would be very interested. That might be something, if you have not thought of or that hasn't been talked about, I think the parents would really appreciate that, because you might have some very surprised and angry parents coming to you after the fact. One of your goals I've heard before was for the board, what professional development will assist the board in improving their governance skills. And I don't mean to be flippant, but one of them might be to actually engage with the parents and listen to their concerns and act on them. Education is not supposed to be indoctrination. It's supposed to be teaching children critical thinking, math, English, writing. Social and emotional learning is nothing but critical race theory. These health standards that are coming down is nothing but grooming children for pedophiles. It's something that you certainly don't want me discussing openly in some of the things that they'll be discussing in class or some of the books that you have in your libraries. It's pornographic, and I think you know it. There is something called the SIPA Act, Child Internet Protection Act, and if you have certain things in your library, you certainly do have the internet connected, and you receive funds from the federal government for that internet access. The Child Internet Protection Act makes sure that there's certain things that you don't allow to go over the internet through the school. Violence and pornography. So that's something to be considered.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Nicole Gallo, Laguna Township. Hi, guys. I did want to speak to a couple of situations, or points, I should say, about the new DEI that's coming down, that I know is on the table for the kids. First of all, I do want to point out that, as we all know, that the board is supposed to be apolitical. Many of us know, and here in administration on the board, that there are people in two specialist activist groups, Evolve and Indivisible, that is affecting a lot of the curriculum and decisions that are made on this board. I do think that's a conflict of interest, and I think that needs to be addressed somehow, some way. There's a lawsuit going on, plenty of lawsuits, that parents are suing school districts for the DEI because it is racist. It is excluding white males. It is excluding conservative values and morals. One of the things that I've noticed in the curriculum coming down is it is very anti-white. With a lot of research that I've done on just blacks, whites, Native Americans, and everything, I've come up with a couple of things that I just wanted to point out. The agenda lists up BLM. BLM activists have murdered, burned, looted in democratic cities. They have destroyed homes and businesses. To teach children this behavior is okay, and to be violent, it's counterintuitive. I thought there was no place for hate. 323,000 white males died to end slavery. The first man to own another man was a black man. His name was Anthony Jackson, who the gentleman wasn't able to pay off his debt, so the court awarded him custody of him. That was the first black man to own a black man in the United States, which is in 1654. The United States had the lowest percentage worldwide, 2.4 of slaves in the world. Not that any slaves should be owned. Other countries, Portugal is 46%. Currently, in 2022, there's 94 countries that still own slaves. Both blacks and Native Americans own slaves. If we were for the blacks and we were wanting things better for them, we would all be happy about Roe versus Wade. Why? Because Margaret Sanger created Planned Parenthood to get rid of the black population. Okay? Black population is 13.4%, 38.4% of abortions are black babies. Baby health.
Good evening. Christopher Sedulis, Clinton Township. I'd like to address 3 items. Before I do, I'd like to read 3 quotes. President Biden said, quote, "They're all our children, and the reason you're the Teachers of the Year is because you recognize that they're not somebody else's children, they're like yours when they're in the classroom," end quote. Gubernatorial candidate Terry McAuliffe said, quote, "I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach," end quote. Congressman Malinowski said parents' concerns are, quote, "made-up cultural bullshit," end quote. I think some of these people from top down in this country are forgetting parental rights and what that means. But we're going to remind them, and we're going to keep fighting. Mark my words. Sex standards, the first one I want to address. It's illegal, in my opinion. Gender identity, explicit descriptions of private parts, romantic sexual feelings, masturbation, mood swings, puberty blockers, sexual orientation, gender identity, various ways one could get pregnant, abortion, define anal, oral, vaginal sex. These standards to me are very illegal. It's obscene content, obscene material based upon the law. New Jersey State Law 2009 obscenity law. Just because schools are given a green light, or we have teachers that have licenses to teach sex ed, doesn't allow obscenity, that kind of content, to be taught to other people's children. And if you're going to have, and you're going to go forward with this curriculum, or I should say state standards that you're going to put into the curriculum, it should be an opt-in option, not an opt-out. That forces all the parents to know what their parental rights and what they're allowing and signing on to allow their children to learn. Because there's going to be a lot of parents that are not aware of this. They're sleeping at the wheel. They're working 2-3 jobs. They're busy. They have problems in their life. Or some of them maybe have language barriers, and they're not going to read and understand what their children are going to get caught up in. So I'd like you to consider that. District Policy 4283, electronic communications between teaching staff members and students. I don't know how we can have this policy which says communications of a sexual nature, sexually orientated humor, or language, sexual advances, or content with the sexual overtone would be violating a policy, not even the law. But we're going to ignore obscenity law and have teachers teach this stuff in person. Does it matter if it's in person, face-to-face, or electronically? I really don't. DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, that's also illegal in my opinion, and there's a lawsuit right now in Mountain Lake School District. And why is it discriminatory? Because it's against white people, shaming white people, making them feel guilty, not judging people based upon their character, but the color of their skin. But we're losing that Martin Luther King dream, I think. The lawsuit filed June 6th said the district, quote, forced a racial political ideology on students, which violates students' constitutional right to not be discriminated against because of their race or skin color.
Chris, thank you.
Good evening, I'm Christina Cagno, Pottersville. Thank you so much for volunteering for all your time. I want to add and agree to many of the speakers, parents who spoke just now, and I feel that there needs to be more transparency with our school district telling parents what is happening, especially with the upcoming health education program. I feel like this particular curriculum there needs to be communication of what materials are being used, what resources are being used, what websites, what videos, what is being shown to our children. And I agree with Chris with there needing to be an opt-in rather than an opt-out for the health curriculum, so that we have informed consent, so we can have the knowledge to make a decision. So My other concern that came to mind, I don't know if you're aware of what happened with Hunterdon Central, of the push to have our children become social justice warriors, and the position that happened down there where it was okay for students to protest. A very, very controversial, it was Roe versus Wade, right? It was during school, and there was an assault on at least one student. There's a video that's out there that's very, very disturbing. And I pray that something like that doesn't ever happen here. Thank you. I would like to address one of the emails that we
Before you
received.
start, could you please state your name?
Yes, my name is Kasia Piersky. I live in Lebanon. On May 16th, we received email regarding sexting and sextortion issue and concerns. Let me just read you one sentence for me. In the last few years, there has been increased talk of sexting among teens and the dangers associated with the behavior. Yet, our school library still have obscene books that contain pornography, pedophilia, not to mention the new curriculum that is coming up. Sex between men, boys, and boys that contain, books that contain illustration, images of inappropriate, immoral, and risky sexual behavior that degrades our children to be only, let me mention that again, only as seen as an object of sexual pleasures, not as beautiful, innocent human being. Again, objects, toys, let me clarify that, that's the same thing, nothing else. Why are you surprised of sexting? I mean, it's a hypocrisy. You can't teach sexual responsibility to teens by teaching them to act recklessly. And my question is, who will have, who are the victims here in all of this? Our children. Because in the email stating, you will not tolerate that kind of behavior. It's illegal and can be prosecuted, right? I mean, wow. Brilliant, if you ask me. Again, you are, each one, every one of you, you are responsible for exposing, promoting, encouraging our teens to sexual explicit materials in this school. Not just in California schools, Virginia, Chicago, which is happening everywhere, and parents are fighting because we, quite frankly, we're tired of asking, pleading, negotiating. We are pushing back, and you're going to see that. We are tired, we are done. What else I would like to mention here? Last sentence I would like to say from the email. Our goal is to continue to educate parents and guardians on the current trends and dangers of our children may be facing. You are educating us? No, we are educating you. We are asking you to stop this. And quite frankly, what kind of results are you expecting to get by promoting such a field? Let that sink in. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Tricia Charbonneau, Clinton Township. My main purpose here this evening was I wanted to see as a board what your goals were, and that's really my objective here to talk tonight. I want you as a board, when you're listing your goals and how you can move forward in the best interest of the district and the students, I believe you really are missing that whole community engagement component. This should not be a you versus us. This should be all of us working together for the best interest of all of the students. And I do respectfully disagree with Mr. Straight's opinion earlier that you are always encompassing, you're always working on, working on community relations, working on community engagement. That's all good, but I think that just continually trying to work on it, I think you actually need to come up with solutions. To continually say that this is just ongoing, I think is unacceptable at this point. And I think you need to look at and listen to those constituents that put you in those seats and hear our concerns and stand up for our voices, because that is why we chose you to be there. We wanted you to hear us out. So I think there's a mistrust there, there's distrust, and I think you really need to work on extending yourselves out to your constituents and the community, so that parents can work with you in the best interest of all students, not select groups, not select few. Thank you.
Anybody else would like to speak? Before I go?
You know what, I want to say one thing. Sorry. Hi, my name is Cynthia Reyes Tadulis, Clinton Township. I just want to say, we are all here as parents, and we all, as Trish mentioned, want to do the best interest of all students. And as a parent, having a child here in North Hunterdon, I'm not comfortable with the curriculum, the way they plan on rolling it out and what it entails. That's definitely something that should be at home discussion. I know my child and I'm connected to my child more than a teacher would be. I wouldn't even feel comfortable with my best friend speaking to my son about certain topics that will be discussed in this new curriculum that is intended to move forward. So I'm in all hopes that this will be very, taken under consideration. Every child learns differently, we know this. We know our children, other parents know their children, and how they learn and how they mature. Everybody matures differently and understands differently. And I do think together everyone will achieve more if parents and board and community can come together. Because I'm sure we would agree on so many things, as my husband had once said. And I just think it would be a better place. I don't like the separation. I don't like to see separation. I'm not for that. I'm about respect. I respect people. I teach my children to respect people. I don't teach them to look or treat someone because of how they walk, how they look, what they wear, who they are. Is what we look at, who they are. And they're a person just like you. I always say a person is a reflection of me. If someone sees me for the beauty, then you know what? You're a beauty, because I'm a reflection of you. If someone sees me as something less than beauty, or ugly, or intolerable, then maybe they need to look at themselves, because maybe that's who they are as well. I just want respect. I want education. I think it's great, the goals that you have in regards to, loss education. I think it's great that we focus more on academics to really help elevate their education. And those are the things we need to focus on. And I think we can get there. I know we can get there. We just need to get there together. And I think there really needs to be a focus on that. Thank you.
Christopher Stadoulis, Clinton Township. Just wanted to touch upon my third item, library books that were once in question, but were voted on and allowed to stay in the library. I've heard a lot of arguments, a lot of it personal, emotional, which is not invalid, perfectly acceptable. Their own experience is their experience, and nobody can take that away. I've also heard the one main argument, which sounded great when you hear it, the First Amendment, the speech, the right to read what you want to read, and read different views and opinions and ideology, and I'm all about that. But there's 9 types of speech that are not protected by the First Amendment. And the books are not a problem for us, and we didn't raise the issue of the books because they're LGBT. As my wife said, we want people to get along. We probably agree on more than we disagree. We might feel differently on how we get there, but we're from New York City. I used to be a liberal, Obama voter, support gay marriage. I used to be an actor. I have a lot of friends in the LGBT community. We have black family, my wife has Asian family. So nobody knows anybody. And to judge people based upon a stance on an issue or the color of their skin or the gender or what have you is wrong. So I wanted to put that out there so you know a little bit about me and my wife and where we come from. Because we're probably not at all different in a lot of ways. But 9 types of speech not protected by the First Amendment, which is also on the DOJ website, mind you. Obscenity. Obscenity is not protected speech. It could be a love story, beautiful love story about the Titanic in a book. If there's one page with excerpts or visuals, images of obscene content, that is illegal content. The law doesn't say there has to be X amount of percentage of illegal content. Does not. It's black and white. It's also a violation of the 2009 New Jersey obscenity law that I mentioned earlier. And the last thing I'll say, right on New Jersey, Department of Justice website, obscenity is not protected under First Amendment rights to free speech, and violation of federal obscenity laws are criminal. The Supreme Court even stated this in a case in 1998. They stated, quote, and I'll end with this, the Supreme Court has ruled that transmitting obscenity and child pornography, whether via the internet or other means, is illegal and under federal law for both adults and juveniles. So anything on the computer, on your website, the district's website, or if any books that are shipped in, hard copied, mailed, and it has that kind of content, it is illegal. Doesn't matter if it's given awards. Harvey Weinstein was given awards. Roman Polanski was given awards, convicted rapist. I don't care who gives these books awards. They're illegal.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you. Sounded like you ended my time there before the bell rang.
I didn't. Actually, I started timing when you started speaking.
Yeah. You can take a breather. I'm not going to go over the time. I have respect.
Fantastic.
Andy
Moving on.
Roeder, Greenwich Township. I just want to make a statement. These parents are speaking from their hearts. They're coming to you. Some of them, it's difficult for them to get up and speak to you like this. I know that you don't answer us, which is sad because we can't have a dialogue. But I want to say, I realize that most of everything that's being said is going on deaf ears. I just want to say it's shameful. Thank you.
All right, moving on with the agenda. Can I call for a motion and a second to approve agenda items 4.1 to 17.23?
I'm sorry, you said 4.1?
14.1
Through, I'm sorry.
to 17.23.
Motion.
Roger?
Second.
Deb, second. So, does anybody have any questions before we vote?
I do. Resolution 062822, professional services. Has the hourly rates increased for any of the firms? So noted. is particularly legal?
Legal is not increased, no.
This is set from last year, none of these have increased.
Which item number are you talking about?
Sorry, I'm 14.3.
Thank you.
When you refer to legal, the legal and the bond council did not increase.
And our fees for general counsel?
General counsel did not increase, no.
Okay.
Any other questions? Seeing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Or abstentions?
Yeah, I'm in favor, I'm going to abstain from 3 of them, and I'm in favor of the rest of them. 14.1 and 2, 17, 9, 10, and 11.
So you're abstaining from all 5?
From those 5. There's-
Okay. Okay, can you just motion pass?
Yes.
Okay.
Jess, I'm sorry, we took all of them, went through 17.23?
Through 14.1
Yep.
to 17.23.
Okay, I do have a couple questions. This goes to the bills list. Katie, maybe you can reference, there's a, it's continual through the bills list. I don't know, it looks like it's a payment. I can give you the number. It's DB 60-143. It occurs several times through, it'll be an individual and then payment. It's just a consistency. Is it something that happened?
It sounds like that's the vendor code, so I would have to see which vendor that.
I can forward it to you, but it's throughout the whole,
Yeah, if you want to
bills
send
list.
me the code and then the name that's next to it, that would help me be able to answer your question.
there's like dozens of them.
Okay.
So I was wondering if it was related to something that there's a need for in the district or a lack of.
Again, I'm trying to
I'll-
find it on my own, but if I have the name of the vendor, I can answer it.
I can
You have
give
them
you-
highlighted?
I do.
Yeah, if you
You
wanna-
can go to, I can give you the check number, I can give you the, I don't want to
Check
give
number would help,
individuals.
because I think that's the order that's.
Go to 030876.
02.
03, so 030876. I'm just pulling one out.
Got it.
I don't want to list the names to it.
That's fine.
I mean, it just goes,
Oh, I see. This is a list of cafeteria refunds, so we're using the same vendor code, but it's several individuals that are getting cafeteria refunds at the end of the year. So
'Cause
people have requested that if their students graduated, that they get whatever money is remaining in their cafeteria.
that's why it's so hard when there's no, I know it's hard to put in just to see, so we would have never asked this if we saw it
Unfortunately,
was.
it's the way we
You
have
can
to
always
process
ask the question ahead of time, because I know in
Yes.
several instances, if there's a specific question regarding the agenda, Katie can get back to you prior to the meeting
I couldn't get to
started.
this beforehand, that's why, I just did this
Okay.
today, the bills list today. Thank you.
Do we need to vote?
We've already voted.
We already voted.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
okay.
voted.
So I didn't know if the question impacted that or not.
No, I was just, sorry, I didn't know you had gone to 17.23, my apologies, but Katie, I would have sent that to you, I just saw it today.
That's fine.
Thank you.
All right, moving on. Is there any old or new business we'd like to discuss?
I have a new business, I guess. It's actually about the solar thing. I've had several conversations recently with people in the, they're in the district in my neighborhood who have no idea that we have solar on our schools, and this is like a big win to me. I mean, this is like.
Funny you bring that, we did talk about having a ribbon cutting of some sort at our committee meeting, so I'm not sure if,
We
But
have
those-
started making progress with Honeywell, but we want to touch base with FFT before we start releasing any more.
But the idea is when North Hunterdon's done, because that's not done until next month, then both schools will be done, and we can have some sort of like ceremonial, like ribbon cutting, like for the public, and like kind of make a big, like invite the news, invite some press and, sort of publicize the.
But letters did go out to parents to let them know, because this way
Yeah.
they weren't concerned, like, what is all that?
I was shocked,
Yeah.
but I thought, well, I do sit in a meeting every month where I learn about these things, so maybe, and they don't. But it's a positive thing that was uniformly to the few people I talked to unknown. It's like, oh, wouldn't it be great if we did solar? Like, yeah.
We already did it.
it's done.
We're doing it.
So, like I live in Clinton Township, so we have this little Clinton Township newsletter, but that's the Clinton Township board or district has a little thing in there, and probably doesn't make sense.
We
That
need
would be the way
regionalization.
if Clinton Township Middle School.
Of
That's
consistent
what I
message.
find out.
Sounds like you're promoting
Right,
regionalization.
Consistent
I'm
message.
just saying this, I know you
At your
can't have
articulation
an
meetings.
ad and.
Maybe do a little blurb at your articulation meeting, sending those, because there's a lot of empty nesters that, just don't hear about it or don't have kids anymore in the district. So maybe it's good PR and boast it at your,
Ribbon cutting sounds fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about it. We thought it'd be a great idea.
Would that be something you'd put on the websites, the principals, is that something that goes on the website, or is the website real?
solar?
Yeah, like when it happens, that's, so we could do it.
There will be a dashboard.
That doesn't
on-
help the empty
on the
nesters,
website
but
that'll
it
show,
just
No, it doesn't.
reinforces to the parents.
Well, this kind of brings us back to the referendum. They're the first group of people we try to reach out to. For any of the folks that are retired in this community, we talk to about helping vote to pass this thing, because they're the first ones who show up at the polls. So it's really important we communicate really well with that constituent of the community, because they're the ones who really feel the tax burden more than anybody else. And it's really important that we communicate why we're doing what we're doing and how we do it. Because they typically, to your point, wouldn't hear or know much that goes on at the school unless they drive here or come see the games or they pass through our yard for some other event. They typically wouldn't know, because we spend a lot of time talking about these kind of things that we do at our board meetings and at the strategy meetings and our long-term planning and all the other stuff. But if you're not really involved, you don't have kids in the district, yeah, you probably may not know some of the things that we've been doing. And, but back to the referendum point, that is a group that we really need to communicate with more, and find other ways to get that information to them about all the other things that go on in our district.
And unlike some capital projects that will be obvious, I don't think you can see the panels from the street.
Only on the random section of the engine. Everything else is available, you're right.
Good point.
Yeah.
photos on the website.
Press at the ribbon cutting.
On the front page of that newspaper that I don't buy, that ends up on my lawn every Thursday, that would be ideal, whatever that's called.
Above the fold, right before you throw it in the trash bin, you don't.
No, it's got crossword puzzles in it, so I open it up.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Any other old or new business? All right. I call for a motion and a second to approve agenda items 22.1 and 22.2, including hand carries if provided.
Motion, second.
All right.
Roger and Rob.
It's a roll call.
Ms. Bonomi?
Yes, except no to 7.3 on the personnel agenda.
No to 7.3. Mr. Chapman?
Yes.
Ms. Hoffman?
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Meelik?
Yes.
Ms. Salino?
Yes.
Mr. Spanton?
Yes.
Mr. Straight?
Yes.
Ms. Beato?
Yes. I call for a motion in a
Motion to
second?
adjourn.
To what?
Motion to adjourn.
I am trying. I'm getting there. Are you calling for the motion,
Yeah.
Roger? Do we have a second on that?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting's over.